Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are going to be breaking down the 2024 John Deere Classic. This is our all-in-one preview, so we are going to be breaking down the course itself as well as the field and what golfers we expect to play well with what we know about this course. So whether you are playing DFS, whether you are betting, whether you are playing one and done, player props, whatever else, we've got you covered here in this preview. We're going to give you all that you need to know about TPC Deere Run and the golfers that are going to be playing this week here in this one episode. Now, if you are new with us here for the PGA Tour this week, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way you can be with us for the rest of the PGA Tour season as well as the rest of the Live Golf season, because we're going to be having content coming your way weekly for the rest of the season. And you can also get the rest of our content that is not exclusive to golf. We've already got some best ball content this summer for NFL and college, and we're going to continue that throughout the summer as well. And then once we get into the regular season, we're going to have plenty of NFL and college football DFS coming your way. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss that. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit the like button on this video. It really does help me out a ton, and I really do appreciate that a lot. And if you're listening on audio, you can rate and review the podcast. That is very much appreciated. Now, before we talk about the John Deere, let's have a quick tiny little recap of the Rocket Mortgage. I don't want to have to go back and calculate it, but lost a lot of money on the Akshay Bhatia missed putt at 18. Quite heartbreaking. I had an outright ticket on Akshay. It was actually an each way bet, so fortunately I was able to cash the top 5 part of the each way, but it was quite heartbreaking to think that I was going to have another outright winner and just end up cashing the each way when he missed that putt. And look, I got to say, just watching it from a golfer's perspective, I absolutely understand how he did what he did. The first putt, heading down the hill was very slippery. He did not want to run it 7 or 8 feet past and then have a very difficult par putt. And then I think 100% that watching Aaron Rye's par putt messed up Akshay on that 18th green, because Aaron Rye's putt, did not appear to have a lot of break in it, and he kind of just barely snuck it in the hole. But when Akshay hit his putt, he didn't quite put the same amount of pace on it, and he kind of pulled it just a hair, which he also did on the putt on 17. And that's how you end up with that slight miss off to the right. Now, I will say, overall, it went from being a good week if Akshay had won to a mediocre week at the Rocket Mortgage. We were all over a lot of the guys near the top of the leaderboard. Had some Cam Davis, had a ton of Akshay, had a ton of Aaron Rye, had a decent amount of Cam Young, had a decent amount of Davis Thompson and Minwoo Lee. Unfortunately, we had a lot of Tom Kim lineups. We had a lot of Steven Yeager lineups, had a lot of Taylor Penrith lineups. But, we were able to get a few combinations that were pretty effective, having those guys that ended up near the top of the leaderboard. And I was smart enough to avoid some of the chalk that ended up missing the cut, such as Keith Mitchell. So looking to do the same this week. This week is very much like the exact counterpart to last week. Right? We've got a very similar level field. We've got a course that is going to play at a similar winning score, but it's going to do it in a much different way. So with that being said, with it in mind that, we had a good, not great week last week, let's try to improve on it this week. Let's go ahead and dive into the breakdown and break down TPC Deere Run. So the John Deere Classic is played at the dang it, I messed that up. So let's try again. The John Deere Classic is played at the eponymous TPC Deere Run in Silvis, Illinois, which is in what is known as the Quad Cities area, which if you have never heard of the Quad Cities area, look it up. It's a very interesting metropolitan complex. If you're interested in population and city planning and stuff like that, it's a very interesting case study. But anyway, TPC Deere Run was designed and opened in the year 2000, designed by D.A. Weibring, and it was solely designed with the intent to bring a PGA Tour event to the Quad Cities area. And so this course is absolutely designed for tournament golf. Like a lot of the other TPC courses, it's a setup where you can put a lot of grandstands and you've got a lot of holes that make for great viewing in person and on television. And I got to say, this is a tournament that I feel like it should get a better field than it does, because this course is very aesthetically pleasing. It is very a fun layout. This is a course that I would love to play in real life if I could, just because it's got a lot of unique holes. It's got a lot of very interesting shots that you're being forced to hit. And I just think it's a fun little course and a fun little event here in the Quad City areas. Now, this is a par 71 here this week at TPC Deere Run. It is slightly under 7,300 yards, so it does classify as a slightly short course. There are only 3 par 5s on the 18 holes, and all 3 of which are going to be scoreable. Many golfers in the field are going to be reaching these par 5s in 2 shots this week. Hole number 2, hole number 10, and hole number 17, they are all quite easy. They're all going to be birdie opportunities. You're really going to want to make hay on those par 5s if you want to contend this week. Now, there are numerous par 4s on this course that no matter what the distance on the card is, it's going to play to about a 100 to 150 yard approach shot. A lot of these par 4s are holes that, if you're able to hit driver, that's just the range that you're going to end at. Or you're not going to be able to hit driver. There's going to be a forced layup, or, the fairway ends, and you're going to have to lay up to a shot that's going to leave you a 100 to 150 yard approach shot. And I counted, just looking through the course itself, there are 5 forced layups where you're not going to be able to just swing driver away all the way through. And then there are some holes that others may even opt to lay up, even though it's not forced to. So driving distance this week is not going to be a big advantage, just because there's not really a whole lot you can do with it. On a lot of holes, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that distance and use it. So that's kind of what we're looking at here is off the tee play is not going to be emphasized. Distance is not going to be an advantage. Lack of distance is not going to be a disadvantage this week. That's kind of a similar situation to what you saw last week at the Rocket Mortgage, where distance was an advantage because it created easier approach shots, but lack of distance or lack of accuracy was certainly not a disadvantage because the fairways were so wide and the hazards are so few and far between that missing the fairways, whether you were short or long, did not provide you leave you with that big of a disadvantage. Now, the fairways this week are going to be slightly wider than PGA Tour average. You absolutely do want to be in them. The rough can get grown out. It is going to be tree lined on most holes. So finding fairways is going to be at a premium this week. The main quirk of this golf course, the only way that it is actually like any level of difficult at all, is the numerous elevation changes and a big potential for sloping lies. That is one reason why you see guys that have had success here have a ton of success at Augusta National, because that is something that comes up year in and year out at Augusta. Is you just never end up with a flat lie. That's kind of the case here at TPC Deere Run. Now, the greens themselves here at TPC Deere Run are pure bent grass. We're not dealing with the bent POA mix like we had at the Rocket Mortgage or TPC River Highlands. So there's no drama, no controversy, no debates with that. They're pure bent grass and they do run true. They are some of the more well-kept and pristine green complexes on the PGA Tour. They are slightly above average size. They're not super fast. These are not like Memorial or Augusta National, like speedy bent grass greens, but they are going to roll true. Good putters are absolutely going to have an advantage here for that. So basically what ends up happening is, with there being so many short approach shots into bigger than average greens, the green regulation percentage at TPC Deere Run does end up being significantly higher than PGA Tour average. So with that being the case, the name of the game is to stick these short approaches with these wedge shots close to the green and cash them in for birdie. Now, really, kind of going by that description, this is an approach and putting week. This is not a driving and around the green week. This is a week where driving and around the green play are going to be minimized, and approach play and putting is going to be emphasized, because you're going to need to make birdies this week if you want to win. The winning score pretty much year in and year out here is -18 or lower, and you have quite an eclectic group of winners. You have long shots like Michael Kim and Dylan Fratelli. You have your short hitters like Brian Harmon and Zach Johnson and Steve Stricker, who Johnson and Stricker have won this event multiple times. Jordan Spieth has won this event multiple times. Bryson DeChambeau, before he got all bulky, won this event in 2017. And then the last 3 years, not exactly long hitters, Glover, Poston, and Straka, but guys who do find a lot of fairways, guys who are good approach players, and guys who do have an ability to spike with the putter. And when you look at the leaderboard from last year, the strokes gain tells the story. The top of the leaderboard did not gain a lot of strokes off the tee. They did gain a lot more strokes on approach. The best approach players were near the top of the leaderboard. And then you also had a lot of guys near the top of the leaderboard that gained a lot of strokes with the putter. So like I said, approach and putting this week, we're not going to be emphasizing off the tee or around the green play. And pretty much those are two categories where it's just going to be hard to actually gain a lot of strokes, right? If everybody's playing to the same spot off the tee, then there's only so much you can do. So only so many strokes you can gain off the tee. And if everybody's going to be hitting greens, then you're just not going to have a lot of opportunities to use that around the green play to your advantage. Now, in terms of course history here, out of guys who have played this event multiple times, Jordan Spieth does have the best course history, gaining an average of 2 strokes gained per round. Alex Smalley has played here 3 times and averages 1.29 strokes per round. Zach Johnson, like we said, has won this event multiple times. Matt McNeely has played it twice in the last 3 years with a T18 and a T8. Garrick Higo also played here once last year to a T21 finish. And then Adam Schenk played here all the last 5 years, has a miscut and a WD, but also 3 top 6 finishes in that span. So course history here can be a little wild. I'm not necessarily going to rule anybody out whether or not they have good or bad course history. It can give them a little bit of a boost. Sepp Straka won this event last year, and his only previous 2 starts at this course were a T26 and a missed cut. So course history here is not necessarily a prerequisite or a requirement, but it is something that can be used to kind of gain a little bit more information. Now, we do this for every week on the PGA Tour. Our key stats this week for TPC Deere Run, we're going to be looking at strokes gained approach, which is important every single week on the PGA Tour, but even more so this week. If you're looking at any off the tee stat, I like good drive percentage or good drives gained. Good drive percentage basically asks, A, did you hit the fairway? Or B, if you missed the fairway, did you hit the green in regulation? So basically, did you keep it, in play off the tee? And that is going to be what I want to look at off the tee this week. That's all I'm really looking for, is you to keep it in play. You're not going to necessarily have to gain a whole lot of strokes off the tee. I'm going to be looking at all proximities that are within the range of 100 to 175. And then I'm going to be looking at birdie or better gained, with the winning score being minus 18 or lower pretty much every year. You're going to need to be able to go low. You're going to need to be able to make birdies this week. I also want to look at putting on bent grass greens and performance on comp courses. And those comp courses are TPC River Highlands, another TPC course that is a wedge fest, a course that you really kind of minimizes off the tee play. So I think that's a really good comparison. With it being an elevated event this year, you don't have as good of a sample size of guys who actually played there this year to look at. Last week, Detroit Golf Club, I do think is a pretty good comp. It is another bent grass birdie fest. And so if guys played well last week, then there's obviously a potential that they could play well again. When it comes to the sloping lies part of TPC Deere Run, Kapalua and Augusta National are both courses that feature a lot of those. Kapalua features a ton of wedges into greens, and so I think that is a great comp. Jordan Spieth has won at both of those locations, so that's a pretty good crossover there. And then Pebble Beach, I do think, is a pretty good comp as well. Just another course that minimizes off the tee with a lot of forced layups, and you really have to dial in your approach and your putting if you want to win at Pebble Beach. All right, so with all that being known about TPC Deere Run, now let's go ahead and let's dive down the rabbit hole. Now, when I say rabbit hole, I'm referring to the tool from betspurtsgolf.com known as the rabbit hole. This is one of the many golf data sites that is available on the internet. This is one that I have really found and preferred using this year because of the ability to kind of filter and use different conditions. And really, you can kind of really get down in the weeds and filter out very specific stats and very specific skills that you want from golfers in order to look if you want to play them in DFS or bet. And you can put it in a custom model as well. And I've really had a lot of success using this. So we're going to go and take a look at the stats that I'm looking at in the rabbit hole here this week. So first off, if this is going to be an approach and putting week, we need to know who are the best players in the field on approach. And in the last 36 rounds, the top 10 are Sepp Straka, Aaron Rai, Keith Mitchell, Ryan Moore, Daniel Berger, Patton Kizzire, Joel Damon, Doug Gim, Kevin Yu, and Chandler Phillips. Now, transitioning a little bit, if we're looking at strokes gained off the tee, I want to look at strokes gained off the tee at less than driver courses. And the guys that lead that category are Kevin Yu, Keith Mitchell, Sung J M, Jonathan Vegas, Sam Stevens, Aaron Rai, Rico Hoey, Cam Champ, Hayden Buckley, and Tyler Duncan. Now, if you switch that up to good drive percentage on less than driver courses, This is kind of a weird stat. You ended up with some weird names here. It's Nicholas Lindheim, Bud Cauley, Aaron Rye, Adam Long, Doug Gim, Cody Gribble, Ryan Moore, Patrick Fishburne, Kelly Craft, Carson Young, and Kevin Chappell. Now, in terms of the proximities, we want to look at all those proximities that are within 100 yards to 175 yards. So from 100 to 125, your top five: Cody Gribble, Ryan McCormick, Jake Knapp, Russell Knox, Richie Warinsky. If you switch it to 125 to 150, Richie Warinsky, Scott Piercy, Nicholas Lindheim, Chandler Phillips, and Austin Smotherman. You make it 150 to 175, and you are left with Kelly Craft, Michael Thorbjornson, Bud Cauley, Sean O'Hare, and Jacob Bridgman. So those proximity buckets, you really ended up with some random names there. And I really need to go back and see if I can make that stat a little bit better, but that's who we ended up with here this week. Now, the other thing I wanted to look at is strokes gained approach on easy courses, or in other words, when you need to make birdies, are you able to put your iron shots in a position that you can actually make those birdies? And the top 10 in that category are Lucas Glover, Alex Smalley, Sam Ryder, Eric Cole, Russell Knox, Aaron Rye, David Skins, Ben Coles, Grayson Sigg, and Patton Kazire. Now, if we switch it up just a little bit to birdie or better percentage on easy courses, you have Jason Day, Sepp Straka, JT Poston, Michael Thorbjornson, Sung J M, Nick Dunlap, Eric Cole, Chris Gotterup, Jordan Spieth, and Denny McCarthy. Now, I also wanted to look at strokes gained putting on bent grass, but I also wanted to compare it to every golfer's kind of normal baseline for strokes gained putting. So like, for instance, Denny McCarthy is the #1 putter in this field on bent grass, but he's also the #1 putter on all surfaces. So that should be no surprise that he's also #1 on bent grass. So he doesn't necessarily raise his baseline because his baseline is already insanely high. Now, of the next group, Ben Coles, Adam Long, Hayden Buckley, and Brant Snedeker significantly raised their baseline, where golfers 6 through 8, JT Poston, Adam Schenk, and Martin Laird, are good putters on any surface, but they are better putters on bent grass. 9 and 10 are Richie Warinsky and Davis Riley. Now, of the other guys who significantly raised their baseline on bent grass, Cody Gribble is one. He's popped up a few times now. Maybe he's a value play that might be worth a look in DFS. Nick Hardy, Ryohei Satsune, Austin Cook, Patrick Fishburne, Robbie Shelton, and Sepp Straka, Callum Tarrant, Seamus Power are all guys that significantly raised their baseline on bent grass. And those are all guys that we have a verifiable sample size for. Now, next up, I wanted to look at strokes gained at my comp courses list that we rolled out earlier, and I also included TPC Deere Run in this list. The top 10 in this field on the comp courses are Maverick McNeely, Sung J M, Troy Merritt, Mark Hubbard, Seamus Power, Aaron Ryan, Daniel Berger, Ryan Moore, Denny McCarthy, and Jordan Spieth. Now, to kind of give a little bit more of a sample size to a lot of these guys, let's look at just strokes gained on short golf courses. And let me double check. No, I'm sorry. This was on easy golf courses. The next one's going to be short golf courses. So on easy golf courses, your top 10 was Poston, Cole, Griffin, Todd, Thompson, Dunlap, Day, Coles, M, and Keith Mitchell. If you switch it over to short golf courses, you have Eric Cole, Sung J M, McCarthy, Hubbard, Straka, Poston, Todd, Hostler, Hisatsune, and Mitchell. And then if you make it short and easy courses, both of them at the same time, you end up with Poston, Todd, Cole, Svensson, Dunlap, Griffin, Straka, McCarthy, M, and Spawn as your top 10. Now, if you throw all of that into a model, my #1 golfer for the week ended up being Sepp Straka, which should come as no surprise. He's the defending champ. He is the best player in the field on approach in the last 36 rounds. He knocked out of the park with the comp courses, great at easy courses also. He's a guy who's great with his irons, can't spike with the putter. No problem with him being #1 in the model. #2 is a guy that I don't really ever play in DFS, and I really don't ever bet, and that's Lucas Glover. He is kind of one of the elder statesmen of Team No Putt. He is generally not a good putter. He has not been playing recently like the same player that he was at the end of last summer, where when he finally did flip the putter, he was winning. He's a guy I'm going to have to look more into this week before I make a determination as to whether or not I'm going to have him in my DFS lineups. 3 was JT Poston, who's a guy I like a lot this week, as is Aaron Wright at 4. Keith Mitchell at 5, more on him later. Dylan Wu, 6. Sungjae M, 7. Jason Day, 8. Not a guy I play in DFS very often either. Davis Thompson, 9, and Doug Yim, 10. A guy I thought was going to be near the top of the list, Denny McCarthy, was number 11. Now, when you go back and filter it by salary, Jordan Spieth was 52nd in the model. That's largely due to the fact that his recent form is utterly atrocious. Maverick McNeely was 30th, which was a little bit different than what I thought. But then again, he is not a great approach player, so maybe all the approach tests that I threw in made that one come out the way it did. Nick Dunlap, 63. Sam Stevens, 83. Luke Clanton, 71, but I think he's getting punished for his sample size. So more on him a little bit later. But those are kind of really the standouts that we were looking at. So anyway, that was the first run of my custom model. Every single week, though, I release a full article on Wednesday that has my DFS scores for DraftKings as well as FanDuel and the top 10 from my model, because I'm going to tinker with this model, try to make it better as we go through the week. I really want to see what happened with those proximity buckets and why we got so many weird names near the top. So I'm definitely going to be looking at it, definitely going to be tweaking it, and you can get the full top 10 from that model as well as those DFS scores on my Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. You will also get access to all of the best ball tools that we have for the NFL so far this summer. We've got our stacking guide that has been released and our rankings are in the works. And then once the regular season starts, you will get the weekly DFS scores for college football and NFL, in addition to the PGA cores that you're getting here throughout the summer. You also will get the DFS scores for Live Golf as well as PGA Tour events. All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then let's take a look at the board and see who we want to play in DFS and betting. So looking at the board on DraftKings, one thing that is really interesting is DraftKings came out with their salaries in DFS this week after Patrick Cantlay had before Patrick Cantlay had withdrawn. So he is actually in the player pool on DraftKings, whereas FanDuel came out with their salaries after Patrick Cantlay had withdrawn. So he is not in the player pool. So that kind of creates an interesting dynamic where on DraftKings now there are no golfers in the 11K range with the withdrawal of Patrick Cantlay. And there's also no 5K range this week on DraftKings. It stops at a minimum of $6,000. So really, this is going to be a much different week in terms of lineup construction than pretty much any other week that we've seen, with the top salary being so low and the minimum salary being higher than what we're used to. And I got to say, with the field being pretty weak this week, the 6K range in DraftKings and DFS is it's quite poor. So I'm probably not going to be building a whole lot of lineups where I get super aggressive near the top, just because there's not that big of a difference between the guys at the very top and kind of like the 8K range on DraftKings. There is a big difference in the guys in the 7K range and the guys in the 6K range. So I'm kind of going to be, keeping that in mind as I'm building out my lineups on DraftKings this week. On FanDuel, it's a little more standard, but still, I think the same principle applies where I really don't want to get too much in the bottom of this field. The bottom of this field is where it gets quite poor. In terms of looking for an outright winner this week, I don't think that this is the week to necessarily go chasing favorites. I kind of see this week as being like, I don't know. I kind of see somebody in like the 9K range on DraftKings winning this week. If that were like, if I had one pick, that would be my guess. But I do think that, there's plenty of guys that can win. There's going to be some guys that I'm going to bet this week. I'll let you know who they are. But really, just this is a week where truly anything can happen, but I'm going to keep that in mind as we go through approach plus putting, like we talked about the entirety of the show so far. Now, Jordan Spieth is at the top of the board on DraftKings as well as FanDuel. He has won this event twice, in 2013 and 2015. Obviously, this is not the same Jordan Spieth that he was in 2015. This Jordan Spieth right now is gaining a ton of strokes off the tee and horrible pretty much everywhere else. He's been dealing with a wrist injury, which I think has affected him more than he would like to let on. And I think that has led to a lot of poor play here in the calendar year 2024. Now, here's the good news, though. I like Spieth as a DFS play this week. I do not like him as an outright bet. I would not want to bet Jordan Spieth as the favorite to win a golf tournament right now, just bottom line. But in DFS, I don't think anybody's going to play him. And if nobody's going to play him, even if he is the highest priced player on the board, I'll gamble that a 2% Jordan Spieth maybe just gets super lucky and chips in 4 times and makes 350-foot putts, because that's kind of what Jordan Spieth does. And he's won this event twice, so he clearly has some familiarity with the course. I'm going to roll him out in DFS, but I do not like him as an outright bet this week. With there being no Cantlay, and with Spieth not garnering a lot of ownership, I think you are going to see a ton of chalk from each of the next 6 golfers on the board. And I got to say, I like all of them, but it's going to be nitpicking when it comes time to pick between them. Sepp Straka was number 1 in my model, defending champ, playing good golf, great approach player. No problems with him. I don't necessarily like the idea of playing Straka as like the first guy in a lineup, but hey, it's what we're at this week. Same deal with Sung J M, who has had a really weird last 3 months. He was very poor at the start of the year, missed the cut at the Masters. Since then, has gone T12 or better in every regular PGA Tour event and missed the cut at every major. Well, last time I checked, the John Deere Classic is not a major. And so, he's kind of eaten up these weak fields, and I kind of think that he could do it again. He's been trending in the right direction with the exception of very poor aberrational performances in majors. So I do think that this could be a pretty good time to play Sungjae. Aaron Rai, I think, is going to be super popular because of what he did last week with that T2 finish. And look, I kind of think the Thursday will tell you what you need to know about Aaron Rai. Aaron Rai, I feel like more than anybody else on the PGA Tour, when he's going to contend that week, he shows it to you on Thursday. He's near the top of the leaderboard after round 1. If he's not going to be a factor, he's not going to be near the top of the leaderboard after round 1. So I wish I knew what Thursday's round was going to look like for Aaron Rai before I knew whether or not I was going to play him this week. But I don't think he's a poor play. I do think he fits the course pretty well. I don't think he's a bad option. I think I would probably rather have Straka or Sungjae than Aaron Rai, but I don't think he's a poor option. Maverick McNeely is a guy that if we kind of have in mind approach and putting, well, he kind of checks one of those boxes. He's a great putter, and he is returning from injury this year and hasn't really putted his best. So it's kind of nice to know that he does have the putting performances out there, and that he can kind of ignite at any time. He's also at his best at shorter, easier golf courses. And he's played this event twice in the last 5 years and finished 8th and 18th in those 2 appearances. So he's clearly very comfortable here at this golf course. Davis Thompson is a guy that we talked about a little bit at the start. He is an elite ball striker right now. At the PGA Tour level, his ball striking has been absolutely phenomenal. And if that continues, he's going to give himself plenty of birdie looks. And he seems to kind of show up and play his best at easy golf courses. T2 at the Rocket Mortgage last week, T2 at the Myrtle Beach Classic, runner up to John Rahm at the American Express a year ago. All of his best finishes have been at easy golf courses. So let's just hope that he can kind of get hot at the right time here at an easy golf course. So with what we talked about at this course, to me, this is a perfect Denny McCarthy course. Side note. So my wife's family is from Maryland. Denny McCarthy is also from Maryland. And my wife's grandfather knows somebody who's familiar with Denny McCarthy, and he always calls him Dennis McCarthy. So whenever we're watching PGA Tour golf or something, he's like, how's Dennis McCarthy doing? And I'm like, you mean Denny? And so it's kind of been funny to see that evolve. But anyway, Denny is a guy that I play a lot in DFS because, simply put, he's one of the best putters at a golf ball in the world. And if you're a long-term listener of the channel, you've probably heard this before, but I would take a guy that clearly is one of the best in the world at a certain skill set and hope that he can just bring the rest of them any given week. It's kind of like the same idea of playing Bryson or playing Cam Young, right? You can play an elite driver at the golf ball and hope that they bring the rest of their game with them. So Denny McCarthy is like the opposite, where he's, the best putter in the world. So with Denny this week, this is a course that de-emphasizes off the tee play. Well, he's normally a poor off the tee player. In terms of approach play, you're not going to be dealing with long irons. He is not a great long iron player. He's much better with his short irons and with his wedges. So to me, this is a perfect course for Denny, where the strengths of his game are accentuated and the weaknesses of his game are minimized. He is probably going to be one of the guys that I'm going to bet this week. I'm kind of waiting to see if the number jumps back a little bit, because I think the books overreacted to the can't lay WD. But I do think that he's going to be a guy that I'm going to end up betting this week. He is one of my favorite plays in all of this week. Now, JT Poston is another guy that I like this week. He is not a defending champ, but he won this event back in 2022. Plays his best at short courses, plays his best at easy courses, good wedge player, checks a lot of boxes, with a lot of people going to what I perceive to be the top of the board with those first 6 guys that we mentioned. I think that you're not going to see a lot of ownership on JT Poston, so I do think that he could be a sneaky little play at the bottom of the 9K range. Another guy that I like this week is Nick Dunlap. Like, we talked about this a little bit last week, and it kind of came true. He finished T10. So, like, Dunlap is at his best where the course is just out there in front of him, and there's not a whole lot of thinking involved. There's not a whole lot of calculations involved. It's just point and shoot golf. And I think that TPC Deere Run is not so much in that regard as Rocket Mortgage was, but I do think there's a little bit of it in that as well. It's also a very easy course. He tends to play his best at easy courses. So Nick Dunlap, definitely a guy who's going to be getting some consideration from me this week. Luke Clanton is also a guy we got to talk about. So he's played 2 events in the last month, the U.S. Open and the Rocket Mortgage Classic. He has been great in terms of driving, approach play, and putting in both of those events. He's been very poor around the green in both those events. Well, if your only weakness is around the green play, you're going to a course this week where around the green play is not an emphasis. And so I absolutely think he could run back his performance at T10 at Rocket Mortgage. I don't think we know necessarily who he is yet as a golfer long term, but I think 8,600 is a reasonable price to pay. My favorite guy in the 8K range, though, is going to be Eric Cole. And this might surprise some people because I've kind of been off of Cole most of the year because he just has been bad. Quite frankly, he's played a lot of events and hasn't played a lot of them well. Well, he finished T6 at Rocket Mortgage last week. And if you look at how he did it, it really tells a story. He's not a good driver of the golf ball. He's not long off the tee. He's not accurate off the tee. Well, neither of those two things are really going to punish him a whole lot this week at the John Deere Classic. He is an elite level wedge player, which he's going to have in his hands a lot at the John Deere Classic, and he is an above average putter in this field. So to me, he checks off all the boxes that I want, and at $8,500, I'm hoping that a lot of people forget about Eric Cole, and I can get him at low ownership this week. Seamus Power is another guy that I like a ton this week. At his best at short golf courses, loves having a wedge in his hand. T20 at the Travelers in a much better field than this one. Better putter on bent grass than his baseline. Checks off a lot of the boxes of what I'm looking for this week. Seamus Power is going to be one of my favorites in the 8K range also. And then last week, we were on Bo Hostler, and I got to say, y'all, I think I'm going to go back to it. Just a guy that, you know, his weaknesses in his game, like accuracy off the tee and long approach play, is not going to come into play here very often at all. What he can do is get scorching hot with the putter, and if he does that, he absolutely has the upside to win this event. Oh, I forgot to mention Eric Cole and Seamus Power. One of those two I'm going to be betting this week. I just haven't decided which one. So anyway, with Bo Haas, we're kind of ending the 8K range there. Let's take a quick little breather, and then let's wrap it up by talking about some value play. So one thing that's very interesting about this week is I do think that a lot of the golfers who choose to come play this event know that it fits their skill set pretty well and know that they have a chance to contend at a course such as TPC Deere Run. So there's a lot of guys in this 7K range that like generally fit the description of what we're looking for in terms of good players on short golf courses, good players on easy golf courses, good players on shorter approach shots as opposed to longer approach shots. So like, honestly, if you were just to go like run down the list, a lot of those guys check at least one of those boxes, like Ben Griffin, Adam Schenk, Ryo Hisatsune, Doug Gim, Andrew Putnam, Daniel Berger. I think Nate Lashley you can make an argument for. We're going to mention Justin Lauer certainly fits in that argument. Ben Silver certainly fits in that argument. Dylan Wu, Chandler Phillips certainly fit in that argument. So we're going to mention a few others, though. I do want to give word of caution on Adam Schenk, though. His history at this event is like second to none in terms of like the last 3 times he's finished the event. He's been top 6, but his recent form is god awful. I think like Jordan Spieth, it would not shock me if it came out that he was nursing an injury, and that is the reason why he is just playing very poorly. If you're thinking last week, wait a minute, Mike, last week Cam Davis came in with poor recent form, but had great history at the course, you know, maybe we could have seen that coming. Well, Adam Schenk would be that guy this week, would fit that description of he has utterly awful recent form, but he has a great history here at this course. If you're looking to play the Cam Davis angle and try to run it back with that, Adam Schenk would probably be the guy you would want to go with. Now, Ryo Hisatsune is a guy I like a lot this week. First off, the guy's like 21 years old, and this has been a spot where guys have broken through for their first PGA Tour victory. You think of Jordan Spieth, you think of Bryson DeChambeau. So I really kind of like playing that angle, but also if you just go back and look at his game log, very simply, he's at his best at short courses. He's at his best at easy courses. When you get him at difficult courses, that's not his jam. This one is. So I think this is a pretty good spot for him. And, he had me nervous after a very poor Thursday at the Rocket Mortgage, but he ended up rallying with a 65 on Friday to make the cut. If he had just played better in round one, you're probably looking at like a top 15, top 20 finish out of Hisatsune. I like him a lot this week, sitting there at $7,600. Another guy I like a lot this week is Neil Shipley, but I've got to say, and anybody who has known me for this long can confirm this as well. I said this same exact thing about Trevor Lawrence when he was drafted. Neil Shipley's got to get a haircut because no successful athlete has that haircut. Like, honestly, think back to every sport every successful athlete none of them rock the unkempt, unstyled, long hair for no reason. Like Neil Shipley, like Trevor Lawrence. So Neil Shipley, get a haircut, please. Do us all a favor. But I think this guy's really talented. Low am at both the Masters and the U.S. Open, which kind of gave a glimpse to what he could be. And last week he was T20 at the Rocket Mortgage, where he just blasted it off the tee. Great on approach as well. Really wasn't all that good with the putter. So what if he shows up for this one and is good with the putter? He absolutely has the upside to win this event if he were to gain a few strokes putting, because if he did that at Rocket Mortgage, he absolutely would have been in contention all week long. Now, Andrew Putnam is an interesting one. He's kind of like, we kind of mentioned guys that play well at, similar courses like the whole Rory McIlroy and Keith Mitchell thing. Andrew Putnam is kind of like Tom Kim light version. He kind of plays well at courses that Tom Kim would play well at. So ask yourself this: do you think Tom Kim would play well at a course like TPC Deere Run? I do. Andrew Putnam's one of the best approach players in the field. He's one of the best putters in the field. I think that this would be a pretty good spot for Andrew Putnam at $7,500. Another guy I like a ton is Joel Dahmen. Joel Dahmen has been an absolute demon in the ball striking categories in his last two events at the RBC Canadian Open and the Rocket Mortgage Classic. And Joel Dahmen, we have enough of a sample size in his career to know that he's very streaky. When he gets hot, he tends to stay hot for a little bit until he's not, and then he's not for quite a while, right? And right now, he's coming off a back-to-back top 25 finishes. I kind of think this could be the start of one of his little streaks, and so why not roll the dice at $7,300? However, I do give this word of caution, though, with his sort of fame from the Netflix show, as well as his great recent form, and as well as a lot of other golf content creators this week talking up Joel Dahmen, I do expect him to be pretty popular. So if you're looking to get to him at $7,300 in DraftKings, do find another way to make your lineup a little bit different, because I do expect him to be the highest owned player in this 7K range. Chris Gotterup is kind of like very similar to Davis Thompson in what they bring in their game, in my opinion. The recent form for Davis Thompson has been much better, but Chris Gotterup did finish in fourth place the one time he played this event 2 years ago. So I do think that there is a chance that he could absolutely bring that back at a salary of only $7,200. Now, after that, like I said, y'all, the 6K range is quite ugly. Alex Smalley does come with very good course history, but very poor recent form. Patton Kizzire kind of checks off a few of the boxes that we're looking for as a guy who plays well at easy scoring conditions. T20 at Rocket Mortgage, T10 at Myrtle Beach, been great on approach in recent weeks. He's a guy that I don't mind getting to at $6,900, but he is very boom or bust. If you're looking to play a cash game lineup in DFS, or if you're looking to do like a top 40 parlay or something like that, he's not a guy I would be including in that. I think if he were to play well this week, it would be like top 10. If he were to not play well, it would be like missed cut +9 over 2 days or something like that. Now, another guy I want to talk about is Harry Hall. So like last year, he kind of came onto the scene at Colonial by just like really just lights out putting on bent grass greens at Colonial. And I kind of think he could do that again. He's kind of done that a little bit where he's been above average putting at the RBC Canadian Open and at the Rocket Mortgage in his last two starts. So I would not be opposed to a little Harry Hall, and I don't think he's going to be very owned at all. Another guy that I don't think is going to be very owned at all is Troy Merritt, and I think it's pretty simple. Play Troy Merritt at Birdie Fests. His performances both this year and historically back that up, and I do expect this to be Birdie Fest, so Troy Merritt is going to be the guy that I'm going to be considering for my lineup. Now, another thing that I do think you want to look at this week is just who are guys in this field that like wouldn't shock you if they were winners on the PGA Tour a year from now. I kind of had the same logic on Akshay Bhatia for a long, long time, and it eventually paid off. And obviously now he is one of the probably top 25, 30 golfers in the world, if we're being honest. So who are guys that could make that jump, right? Who are guys that next year are going to be in the 9K range as opposed to the 6K range? A guy that I think might fit that description is Pearson Coody. He was a great collegiate player at Texas. He is been pretty good on bent grass greens. His ball striking has been pretty good. I'm not afraid to roll him out at $6,700. I also think that Ben Coles could fit that description as well. He has been at his best at Birdie Fests, T20 at the Rocket Mortgage, T26 at the PGA Championship, second at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. Side note, how sad is it that I just classified a major as a Birdie Fest, but it absolutely was. So he's a guy that I would be considering also. And then the last two guys that I'm going to mention, Hayden Buckley, very good short iron and wedge player, elevates his putting on bent grass greens. Two of his last three starts have been pretty good, $6,600, not a whole lot of opportunity cost there. And then Matthew Neesmith, just he's a guy that I've had my eye on for like the last 2-3 years now, that he kind of pops randomly and is always on short golf courses. He tends to be at his best at short approach shots. So I would not mind rolling the dice on Matthew Neesmith at $6,500. But that's pretty much it, y'all. This 6K range, it's pretty barren this week. I don't really want to dive down here a lot. I want to really start my lineup with one or two of the guys near the top. And get a lot of the 7K plays to back end it, because I don't think there's that much that separates the 7K range from the 8K range, whereas there is a ton that separates the 7K range from the 6K range on DraftKings. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then let's close this out by talking one and done. So last week we were very close to getting another winner on our one and done entry with having Akshay Bhatia. So close. But I got to say, this has been a pretty tough year where if you're somebody who's been playing from behind and needing to make up ground in one and done, it's probably been pretty rough on you, because the chalky plays in one and done have came through more often than not. And so I do think that this is another week where if you're needing to make up ground, yeah, you're going to have to find a way to be unique, but like you're kind of playing at a disadvantage because the guys who should play well are the ones who are playing well, right? So anyway, this week we are getting pretty late into the season. So I really don't feel like, saving anybody in this field for any other event, if I'm being honest. Like, Patrick Cantlay, you'd have the argument to use him in other events, obviously, but he withdrew, so that's beside the point. Sepp Straka, I could see a compelling argument for using him at the FedEx St. Jude Invitational, where he was runner-up a few years ago. If he were to show up to Wyndham, you could use him there. If he were to show up to the 3M, you could use him there, but there's no reason not to pick him here this week if you haven't already picked him, if we're being honest. And I think the same goes for Jordan Spieth. There's certainly nowhere on the schedule where I would want to play Jordan Spieth left. Denny McCarthy, there's no natural fits left. JT Poston, you could possibly save him for Wyndham. Same with Tom Kim. I think if you had Tom Kim left, you could probably have him saved for Wyndham. Sungjae Im, if you're looking to save him, you could probably save him for the Wyndham, but there's nowhere else where I would really consider Sungjae to still on the schedule. So anyway, with it being late in the season, with there being so few of these guys that you're going to want for future events, what I think is going to happen is a lot of people are just going to pick from the top of the board. And so your popular picks this week are going to be Sungjae Im and Sepp Straka. People who have not yet used Jordan Spieth will likely use Jordan Spieth. I think he will be quite popular. Denny McCarthy is going to be a guy that I think you might see a lot also. The people who have been more aggressive so far this season and used the likes of Straka, Im, and Spieth already will probably migrate over to Denny McCarthy or maybe JT Poston. I don't think this is a bad Eric Cole spot either. We've mentioned how I think this is a supreme fit for Eric Cole, and there's certainly nowhere on the rest of the schedule that I would want him for. Aaron Rai is another one that I think that a lot of people are going to use as well, just based off of his recent form and the fact that there is nowhere where you would want to save him for in the future. So with that in mind, we expect all the guys near the top of the board to be popular picks, right? So if you were needing to gain ground, who's somebody further from the top of the board that you can play? I think Davis Thompson is an option. I think that Maverick McNeely would be an option. And I think that, any of the guys that we mentioned in the value plays section that we liked, or even in the 8K section that we liked, like Seamus Power, I think you could use this week if you want to be a little bit different. But like I said, I think a majority of the entries are going to be going with Straka, Im, Spieth, McCarthy, Poston, Aaron Rai. I think those are going to be your popular golfers this week. Now, the good news is I don't think any of them are going to be supremely chalky popular. So no matter which one of them you pick, if that guy does end up winning, you should be able to make a lot of ground on a good amount of people. Now, with what I'm looking at here, in this entry, I still have Tom Kim available for the Wyndham. I could also use Tom Kim at the Scottish Open if I wanted. So maybe that's something to think about. So with that in mind, I don't really feel like I need to save Sung Jae for the Wyndham. With his recent form, I do think he's coming in a pretty good spot. So I am going to use Sung Jae M here in this one. And as you guys can see, this is a 150 person one and done that I'm in. I'm in 47th place. I need to get to about 25th to cash. So knowing that I've got a few events left, knowing that I've got some big guns left, I feel pretty good about using Sung Jae M here in this one this week. All right, so that is going to do it for this week, y'all. So like I said, whether you are playing one and done DFS or betting this week for the John Deere Classic, hopefully I gave you guys all the information that you need to know in order to pick some winners and have a good week. If you like what you saw here on this video, please do me a big favor, hit the like button on YouTube, rate and review if you're listening on audio, and go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the audio feed. That way you can be with us for the rest of the PGA Tour season, as well as the rest of the Live Golf season, as well as the rest of all of our NFL and college football content that is going to be coming your way, including all the best ball content that has already been released. And also, if you do want to know who makes my final DFS core, as well as the final top 10 in my model, patreon.com/Mike'sMoneyPicks is where you can get access to that weekly. And then you can also, if you go ahead and subscribe now, you will have access to all of the NFL and college football DFS cores when the regular season starts for that. All right, but that does it for this episode, y'all. So like I said, hopefully we're able to have a good week this week. Last week was good, not great, was able to be on most of the right people in most of the right spots. Hopefully this week we're able to do the same, but just really fine tune it and kind of really hoping we can hit a big one this week in DFS, really hoping that one of the outrights goes through as well. This year outright is, betting became legal in North Carolina the same week of the Players, and I really didn't fool around with outright betting a lot at the start, but I did hit Akshay to win at the Valero Texas Open, and now I've hit the each way on Bryson. I had the cash out, or Bryson at the PGA, I should say. I had the cash out on Tom Kim at the Travelers. I had the each way on Akshay at the Rocket Mortgage. So hoping to add to that list this week and at least get myself an each way cash, or hopefully find that. But anyway, like I said, hopefully I gave you guys all the information that you need to have a good week this week. Best of luck to you guys this week here at the John Deere Classic. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you next time.